Chapter 1 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Rebirth Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations Bad luck would descend on people who had everything they wanted. Yen Shi was deeply touched by this saying. It was her first time attending a top-notch medical summit on her own. After sleeping for a while, she woke up to find that her hand was uncontrollably stabbing her chest with a knife. The sudden pain caused her vision to darken, and her already muddled thoughts started to drift away. In dizziness, she heard the man gritting his teeth. Yen Shi. Do you like Zhang Ming that much? Yen Shi thought to herself that the man's voice was actually quite nice. When Yen Shi opened her eyes again, her wound had already been bandaged, but it still hurt. She hissed, her confused gaze sweeping the room before settling on the man beside the bed. The man was sitting in a wheelchair. He was handsome and had deep facial features. His pair of peach blossom eyes looked calmly at Yen Shi without any emotions. There was actually such a handsome person in the world. Yen Shi was stunned and subconsciously called out, "Hubby." The man frowned slightly, his eyes watery. He pushed a document towards Yen Shi and said in a low and cold voice, "This is the divorce agreement. I've already signed it." He paused for a moment before adding, "As for Zhang Ming, I will no longer hold him responsible." Wow, divorce at the start. As Yen Shi thought to herself, a memory that did not belong to her was forcefully squeezed into her mind. She widened her eyes, and everything that seemed abnormal now made perfect sense. She entered a book that her best friend strongly recommended and became an infamous female supporting character who had an affair with her ex Ednl.co. The man in front of her was the male supporting actor, Gu Shen, and the elder brother of the female lead, Gu Yuan. At the age of 26, he had stabilized his business empire. His only flaw was that he was permanently disabled and could only move in a wheelchair. Although Gu Shi was handsome, rich, domineering, and affectionate, for some reason, girls in this book never fell in love with him, perhaps because of his disability. Eventually, they made the host, an illegitimate daughter of the Yen family, marry him. Resentful at being made to marry Gu Shun, the host started to retaliate by making out with her ex, deliberately cheating on him. Yen Shi was angry while she was reading the book, but now she was even angrier when she thought about it. She thought those people really had bad taste. If she were to choose, she would have definitely chosen to marry Gu Shen as he was her ideal type. The current storyline was that the host was busted while secretly meeting with her ex. Zhang Ming flew into a rage out of humiliation and stabbed Gu Shen's assistant. In order to get Gu Shen to drop the charges against Zhang Ming, the host threatened him by stabbing herself with a knife. It was no wonder she was getting a divorce. Seeing that Yen Shi was distracted, Gu Shen spoke again, "The assets in the marriage have been divided. This money is enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life." Wait. Yen Shi quickly sat up. The wound caused her to gasp, but her eyes were sparkling. "Hubby, I'm not getting a divorce." Gu Shen frowned and guessed according to what he knew about her. "Not enough money." "It's not about the money. I don't want to divorce you. You don't have to withdraw the charges against Zhang Ming. If he did something wrong, he should be punished by the law." Gu Shen's brows twitched and his cold gaze landed on Yen Shi. "Do you know what you're talking about?" "I know." Yen Shi's tone was serious. "I'm not getting a divorce." The person who used a knife to force him to divorce and withdraw the charges suddenly became different. Did she really not want a divorce, or was it a new trick? Gu Shen sneered, looking at Yen Shi. "Then why did you stab yourself?" Chapter 2 You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Love My Husband Only Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations, is that the knife I just bought? Yen Shi's face was not red and her heart was not beating fast. She smiled and asked, "Do you think it's fast?" "Don't give me that crap." Gu Shen did not take the document back. "Think carefully. I'll get the document back before tomorrow morning." It's up to you to sign or not. With that, he wheeled himself out of the room. Yen she thought to herself that only a fool would sign it. She knew from the book that if she took the money and ran away, she would end up being murdered and her body burned. As for the money, it would be taken away by Zhang Ming to have fun with her bestie. Instead of getting murdered, she thought she might as well stay with Gu Shen and get a handsome rich husband for free. What was more, she got to torture Jerk. The anti-inflammatory medicine didn't seem to have any effect. In the middle of the night, Yan Shi's wound started to exacerbate. Her entire body was boiling hot, like a half-melted wax. She felt extremely uncomfortable. Her throat was hoarse and dry, and she could not make any sound, so Yan Shi did not call for help. She forced herself to sit up and found anti-inflammatory medicine from the bedside drawer. She chewed a few mouthfuls and swallowed them. The bitter taste of the medicine spread in her mouth, but Yan Shi did not feel uncomfortable. She was already used to this taste. At the age of 14, Yan Shi was admitted to a medical school and mentored by Zheng Ming, one of the top doctors in the country. At the age of 20.3, she received a doctorate degree and became an attending physician in the hospital. However, before she could enjoy her bright future, she was thrown into a book. The only thing that kept her in this book was her handsome husband. However, the terrible things that the host did to Gu Shen were too many to be counted. She didn't know if she could save this broken marriage. While she was lost in thought, the pain started to subside and soon she drifted into a deep sleep. After sleeping for a few hours, Yan Shi was woken up by someone. A sharp voice rang in her ears. The person felt that it was not enough and slapped Yan Shi's wound. "Why are you still sleeping? Zhang Ming is about to go to court." Su Wanwan rattled on by her ear. "If the other party doesn't withdraw the lawsuit, he'll be sentenced to at least 15 years in jail. Didn't you say you would help him? What have you done?" Enduring the intense pain in her chest, Yan Shi impatiently opened her eyes and looked at Su Wan with a bone-chilling gaze. She retorted unreservedly, "Can't you see the wounds on my body? If you like Zhang Ming so much, why don't you find someone to help him instead of me? What nonsense are you spouting?" Su Wan felt guilty but she continued as if she was in the right. "Even if you're injured, you can't ignore Zhang Ming. He loves you so much that he hurt people because he was afraid you would be treated unfairly. How could you allow yourself to watch him being sent to the jail? Afraid I would be treated unfairly?" Yan Shi sneered. "He's afraid that he won't be able to get the money." Su Wan widened her eyes. "How can you say that about him? Go beg Gu Shen, give in to him, and ask him to drop the lawsuit." Yan Shi sneered. "Instead of asking me to beg Gu Shen, tell Zhang Ming that he should be happy that I didn't sue him for hitting my husband." Su Wan was stunned for a moment and asked in surprise, "Yan Shi, what's wrong with you? Don't you like Zhang Ming? Why are you calling Gu Shen your husband now? Did he force you to say so?" "My husband treats me very well." Yan Shi raised her chin and said proudly, "Don't talk nonsense from now on. I only love my husband now. Who the fuck is Zhang Ming?" Yan Shi called Gu Shen husband very sweetly. Gu Shen sat in the wheelchair and looked at the person in front of him with a dark gaze. What the hell was Yan Shi thinking? He frowned, but at the same time, a sliver of hope popped up in his heart. Chapter 3 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Husband, just hug me translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations When Su Wan heard Yan Shi's words, she immediately frowned and reprimanded her in a high and mighty tone. "Zhang Ming sacrificed so much for you. He loves you to the point that he'll sacrifice himself just to protect you. Yet, you abandoned him so cruelly." Yan Shi glanced at Su Wan coldly, thinking to herself, what nice words. However, after that, even though Su Wan knew that Zhang Ming murdered the host, she still got together with him and took the host's money. Why didn't she feel that he was abandoning her? Zhang Ming brought this upon himself. I won't care about him. Yan Shi coldly asked her to leave. I'm going to rest. Get out. How did you become so cold-blooded? Su Wan complained as she sat next to Yan Shi's bed. She chose to ignore the bandage on the bed and held Yan Shi's shoulder tightly, her long and sharp nails circling around the wound. Zhang Ming is about to go to jail and you still want to rest. Su Wan was unhappy. She used a little force and her fingertips pierced into Yan Shi's gauze. The fragile wound burst open. The sudden pain made Yan Shi's body go limp and she almost fell to the ground. Let go. Yan Shi's voice was already hoarse. In addition to the pain, her voice was like a mosquito buzzing, almost inaudible. Su Wan pretended not to hear anything. Her fingers were still on Yan Shi's wound, half pleading and half threatening. Yan Shi, nothing can happen to Zhang Ming. Go and beg Gu Shen to drop the charges against Zhang Ming. The wound swelled up, hurting and swelling. Yan Shi's forehead was covered in a cold sweat. She reached out to push Su Wan, but the force was soft and couldn't move her at all. Taking advantage of Yan Shi's vulnerability, Su Wan tightened her grip a bit at a time. Zhang Ming treats you so well, you must save him. This lunatic. Yan Shi tilted her head and her gaze fell on the glass beside her. Without any hesitation, she grabbed the glass and smashed it into Su Wan's head. What came after the glass was broken into pieces was the painful scream from Su Wan. She then let go of Yan Shi and frantically fiddled with the glass shards on her head. Someone help. Yan Shi seemed to have heard the sound of a wheelchair and immediately used all her strength to shout, Gu Shen, help me. The door opened completely and Gu Shen was pushed in by Gu Yi. He looked at Yan Shi who was lying weakly on the bed. There was a trace of blood on the bandage on her shoulder and her eyes were red. She looked pitiful and aggrieved. The moment Gu Shen went over, Yan Shi complained to him in a sexy and soft voice, completely different from before. She purposely hurt me with her fingernails. I don't want to see her again. Kick her out. Yan Shi, you want to kick me out? Are you crazy? Yan Shi had always been obedient to Su Wan. Even if she was wronged, she would still rush over to beg for her forgiveness. But today, she turned against her all of a sudden. Su Wan opened her mouth and wanted to say something more. Gu Shen sent Gu Yi a signal, who then walked up to Su Wan and said politely and firmly, Miss Su, please leave. Su Wan didn't want to move, so Gu Yi helped her. He grabbed her wrist and dragged her out forcefully. The noise disappeared and the room became quiet. Bvec Yan Shi looked at her shoulder and realized that the blood had seeped out of the bandage, leaving a faint red mark. Hubby, my wound hurts. After Yan Shi finished speaking, she eagerly waited for Gu Shen to comfort her like a kitten waiting for its owner to touch its head. Gu Shen frowned, feeling troubled by something he was not aware of. Gu Yi has already called the doctor. But the doctor isn't here yet. Yan Shi's eyes were misty. I'm really in a lot of pain and my blood is still coming out. Gu Shen looked at her steadily. After a moment, he compromised, what do you want? Yan Shi blurted out, hubby, just hug me. Chapter 4 You are listening at novelfull.audio. A kiss would also do. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. The Yan Shi in front of him made Gu Shen feel unfamiliar. In front of him, Yan Shi used to only show disgust and argue with him endlessly. But now, she was dependent on him and looked at him expectantly. She even hoped that he would come closer. As Gu Shen approached Yan Shi, he became solemn and more intimidating, as if he really wanted to give her a hug. Feeling inexplicably nervous, Yan Shi was considering whether she should close her eyes. When he was 1 inch away from her, Gu Shen stopped and said with a mocking tone, Yan Shi, put away your thoughts. I don't have time to play these silly games with you. Yan Shi, put away your thoughts about playing silly tricks with me, I don't have time to waste on them. So be it. Yen, she thought to herself, pouting. Suddenly, she leaned over and kissed Gu Shen on the cheek. With an innocent expression, she said, "This will do just fine." Gu Shen was stunned. His face was still expressionless, but his ears that were covered by his hair were slightly red. There was a hint of panic in his stiff tone. "Don't do this again." Yen, she asked, "Why? Don't you like it? Then we can shake hands too." She quickly reached out her hand and used some strength to grab Gu Shen's hand. "Stop it." Gu Shen was not used to being so close to others and subconsciously wanted to pull his hand back. "Stop moving. It hurts." Yen, she pouted. "It hurts when you move." The warmth from her hand traveled to Gu Shen's palm. Gu Shen put down his hand helplessly. Yen, she was secretly happy, but she did not say anything else. Her eyes wandered around and involuntarily landed on Gu Shen's lap. All the hardships in Gu Shen's life came from his legs. If his legs were not crippled, he would not have been abandoned by the Gu family, nor would he be given the cold shoulder by others, including the host. He lost all his pride because of his crippled legs. But even if he could only sit in a wheelchair, Gu Shen was still able to build a massive business empire and control the Gu family with an iron grip. When she was reading the book, Yen, she could not help but wonder if he would be able to achieve more if the male supporting character's legs were fine. Now that he was right in front of her, she believed this firmer. She wanted to use her medical skills to heal him so that his legs, which looked no different from a normal person's, could stand steadily on the ground. However, she had never done any surgery before and did not understand the medical institutions of this world, so she reckoned it was best to wait and see. It would be great if his mentor, Ming, was here too. He had done a lot of research in this area. Even in a primitive society, Ming could still carry out an operation with a rock. Gu Shen had already noticed Yen Shi's gaze. The woman opposite him had her head lowered and there was no emotion on her face. But Gu Shen knew that she loathed his legs, loathed his inability to stand up, and loathed everything about him. Slowly, as the redness dissipated, a solemn expression crept upon his face. Yen Shi sighed and asked with concern, "Does your leg still hurt?" The family doctor rushed over with the first aid kit. She quickly removed the bandages and helped Yen Shi apply the medicine again. Yen Shi suddenly said, "Give me an anti-inflammatory injection later." The doctor asked, "Is your wound infected?" "There was an inflammation last night, but it eased after I took the anti-inflammatory medicine. It's probably because the wound wasn't completely cleaned when it was debrided." Yen Shi spoke very naturally, as if she knew these things very well. "It's my negligence. I'll give you an injection later." The family doctor was puzzled, wondering when did she get to know all these. Chapter 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I'm here to apologize to you, translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Since she had nothing to do in the afternoon, Yen Shi took her time to sort out the storyline in her mind. In the end, she found out that what the host did was simply outrageous. The host had done all the things that could insult and ridicule Gu Shen. When Gu Shen needed to rest, she brought a large group of people to the villa for a ball. When Gu Shen had a meeting the next day, she tore up all the important documents he needed and even made fun of Gu Shen's legs in front of all his friends, scolding him for embarrassing her. It was a miracle that Gu Shen didn't kill the host. Yen Shi sighed with emotion. No wonder he could become a CEO. He had more endurance than anyone else. Gu Shen sat in the study room for a long time, but the document in front of him remained untouched. He suddenly asked, "Will a person become completely different overnight?" Gu Yi lowered his head and replied respectfully, "It's hard to say." There was a knock on the door. As Gu Shen brought his attention back, he heard a voice coming from outside. "Gu Shen, can I come in?" Yen Shi had been to the study room many times before, and every time, she would deliberately destroy a large number of documents. She had never knocked on the door before, but now she was suddenly well-behaved. "Come in." With the door slightly opened, She leaned against the door frame and looked carefully, like a kitten who was going to explore the outside world alone. When she saw Gu Shen, she pushed the door open with ease and walked to him. "What brought you here?" "I'm here to apologize to you." Shi's attitude was sincere. "I reflected on myself deeply. Previously, because of my stupidity, I did a lot of wrong things. I'm very sorry. I don't ask for your forgiveness, but I hope you can give me a chance to compensate." "Compensate?" Gu Shen let out a snort, but his eyes were dark. "Do you need me to remind you that last month, you stood here and said the same thing to me? What did you do after that?" This was the third time Shi had said this. She said it 3 times, and she failed to do it 3 times. Deceit was what Gu Shen hated the most. Shi. His voice was cold and bone-chilling. "Don't you play tricks with me. What I need is for you to be obedient and sensible, not those meaningless compensations. Don't challenge me again. This is the last time." Shi's tone was firm. "I promise you that I will do everything I say. I'll prove it to you." In order to better recover from the wound, Shi had been recuperating at home. Gu Shen provided her with everything she needed, so she lived her life quite comfortably. It was just that there were always annoying people who came to ruin your comfortable life. Shi had just forked a piece of pineapple from the plate when the phone that had been silent for a long time suddenly rang. She glanced at the caller ID and saw that it was from Luo Yun. Wasn't she her stepmother? She picked up the call with a pineapple in her mouth. Shi. The voice on the other end of the line sounded bossy. "It's your father's birthday in a few days. Remember to bring Gu Shen home to celebrate it. A big birthday party at 45 years old." Shi's tone was lazy. "Is it so necessary?" The voice on the other end of the phone paused for a moment. When she spoke again, she sounded furious. "What are you talking about? He's your father, of course it's necessary. You'd better bring Gu Shen back in a few days. He doesn't really have time." Shi rejected her directly. "Gu Shen is busy every day and has no time to attend the birthday celebration. What could he be busy with?" Shi replied, "Anyway, he isn't someone you can call over just because you want to." Luo Yun was so angry that her face almost turned crooked. She let out a sarcastic laugh and said, "Why? Does Miss Yen think that because she's married to the first master of the Gu family, she gets to have a say now?" Chapter 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You don't have to force yourself, translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Shi retorted casually, "Unlike you. A mistress talks louder than anyone else." On the other end of the line, Luo Yun was so angry that she couldn't speak. Shi was about to hang up the phone when Yen Dong's voice sounded, who was pretending to be fair. "How can you talk to your mother like this?" After a pause, he continued, "You've been married to Gu Shen for so long. It's time for you to bring him home. Although Gu Shen is a cripple, he's still our Yen family's son. Law. We have to show him some respect." "You don't even get to show him respect." Shi sneered and hung up the phone. Then she blacklisted both of them without hesitation. How dare he speak ill of her husband in front of her? Shi pouted, thinking to herself, "I don't give a shit to your birthday." The host was quite familiar with his condescending tone. Shi's life in the Gu family was like that of Cinderella, living in the abyss of suffering. After her mother died, her father couldn't wait to marry his mistress, and soon, he had another daughter, Chi. During the years she was in the Yen family, Shi never had anything that truly belonged to her. Luo Yun would only give Chi things that Chi didn't want. In front of outsiders, she acted like a good mother. If Chi didn't cooperate, she would be scolded and beaten by her when she returned home. Yan Qi's attitude towards Yan Shi became worse and worse under the influence of her mother. She was mean and would hit and scold Yan Shi whenever she felt like it. After being verbally and physically abused by Yan Qi for so long, the host was bereft of confidence and felt extremely inferior. However, she was not as timid as the host. If someone made her suffer, she would make sure the person suffered greater. Gu Shen also received a call from his father, Gu Hai. Gu Hai was straight to the point, telling him to attend Yan Dong's birthday banquet so as to avoid rumors of the Gu family being arrogant and impolite. Gu Shen didn't object. After agreeing with his father, Gu Shen told Yan Shi about it. Yan Shi was stunned. "You're going to attend the birthday banquet?" Gu Shen immediately thought of his legs when he heard her questioning tone. His eyes darkened and he said, "I'll leave after putting down the gift." "I won't embarrass you." "No," Yan Shi frantically explained, "that's not what I mean. I know you don't like this kind of occasion and it's not convenient for you to appear on stage, so I rejected Yan Dong when he called." "Gu Shen, you don't have to force yourself. It's all right." Gu Shen's expression was calm. "I've already prepared the gifts. I still have things to see. If you need anything, just look for Gu Yi." Looking at Gu Shen, who seemed to be angry, Yan Shi felt bad. She made an effort to make him change his opinion about her, but it was all ruined by her family. The Yan family's banquet started at 7 in the evening. The venue was set to be at the Yan family's villa. Yan Shi took out a silver fishtail dress from the wardrobe. The hem of the dress was inlaid with diamonds, and when it moved, it shone brightly like the Milky Way. Her skin was fair, so the color of this dress not only was not strange on her, but also it made her look even more dazzling. Looking at herself in the mirror, Yan Shi could tell from her face that the host had been a victim of domestic abuse. Yan Shi smiled and the woman in the mirror smiled with her. "I will live well. For me and for you." Yan Shi thought to herself. Gu Shen sat in the car and waited for Yan Shi. He thought that he would have to wait for an hour, but Yan Shi came downstairs very quickly. She was wearing a long dress that was swaying around. Looking up casually, Gu Shen fixed his gaze on Yan Shi. His heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he felt inexplicably frustrated. Chapter 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A Kiss Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. When the assistant saw Yan Shi, he was also slightly stunned and surprised by the change in her temperament. The gloominess and restlessness that used to characterize her were no longer there. She now struck people as a calm and graceful girl at first glance. The assistant did not dare to look at her anymore and quickly looked away. He respectfully opened the car door for Yan Shi. Yan Shi thanked him politely. She picked up the hem of her dress and got into the car, leaning close to Gu Shen. As soon as she sat down, she eagerly said, "I am punctual this time, am I not?" She looked at him expectantly as if she was asking for his approval. Gu Shen felt her burning gaze and said coldly, "Being punctual is what you are supposed to do." "Oh," Yan Shi replied. She didn't look disappointed. Instead, she moved closer to Gu Shen. Her warm breath intertwined with his, and Gu Shen could smell the perfume on her body. At that moment, they looked extremely intimate. "Do you think I look good today?" Gu Shen took a deep breath and deliberately ignored her by looking at the document. But his mind was entirely occupied by images of the girl who was wearing a silver fishtail dress and had bright red lips. She looked like a beautiful rose that was blooming in a diamond. Gu Shen restrained himself and answered casually, "Yes." Yan Shi snorted unhappily. "But you don't even want to look at me." The assistant driving the car heard the conversation behind him and his hand trembled, almost letting go of the steering wheel. Most of the time, the couple treated each other as enemies. When they met, it was rare enough if they didn't end up quarreling. The assistant never dreamed that Yan Shi would take the initiative to talk to the CEO. Gu Shen said quickly and casually, "I took a look just now." "Then take another look." Her slender fingers landed on the document, attracting Gu Shen's gaze. Gu Shen followed her gaze and looked at Yan Shi coldly. The two of them were already very close to each other. Gu Shen leaned forward again. They were only a nose's distance away from each other. Yan Shi was the first to panic. Her hands gripped the backrest behind her. No matter how nervous she was also looking forward to it. What did he want to do? When she was expecting something to happen, Gu Shen retracted his gaze and looked at the document. He then said in a casual tone, "Your hair is kinda messy." Yan Shi took out the makeup mirror from her bag and combed her hair. When she brushed her fingers past her earlobe, she found that she had not put on the left earring. She left home in a hurry just now and the wound on her left shoulder was not fully healed, so she totally forgot about it. The wound on her shoulder had not fully healed. When she raised her hand, her entire arm would tremble. Yan Shi tried a few times before deciding to give up. She turned to look at Gu Shen, her voice clear. "I can't wear the earrings. Can you help me?" Chapter 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The authentic work of Wu Tao, Su Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. The touch from the sensitive area was very clear that the two could not ignore it. Gu Shen didn't speak. The fingers that were pinching her earlobe tightened slightly. Yan Shi said softly, "You're hurting me." Gu Shen loosened his grip, but his expression darkened. He said unhappily, "Gu is this how you drive a car?" As Gu Shen's chauffeur, the most basic requirement was stability. Even if they were driving on a stone road, it was not supposed to be a bumpy ride. He quickly explained, "I'm sorry, Mr. Gu. A little kid suddenly ran out from the corner just now. It was my fault." After hearing that, Gu Shen did not blame him. "Done," he said as he put on the earring for her. "Thank you." Yan Shi touched her red ears and tried to cover it up. "It's a little hot in the car." When Gu parked the car outside the Gu family villa, he got out of the car and took out Gu Shen's wheelchair from the trunk. Then, he opened the car door and carefully helped Gu Shen into the wheelchair. Yan Shi wanted to push the wheelchair but was stopped by Gu. "Madam, it's not convenient for you to push the wheelchair in that dress. Let me do it." However, the real reason Gu did not want her to push the wheelchair was that he didn't trust her. It was no wonder that she was not trusted. The first time the host was allowed to push Gu Shen, she left him on the road, and it took an hour before the bodyguards realized that something was wrong and rushed over to find him. Since then, the Gu family's servants and bodyguards had been stopping Yan Shi from touching the wheelchair. Now she had to pay for everything the host did wrong in the past. Yan Shi took her hand back in embarrassment. "Be careful then." "Don't worry, madam." The banquet was held in the hall on the first floor and some guests had already arrived. They were wearing high-end gowns and holding champagne elegantly. However, when they saw Gu Shen, there was obvious disdain on their faces. When Luo Yun and Yen Dong saw the two of them, they walked over unhurriedly. Their expressions were cold, unlike how they treated others. "You're finally back." Luo Yun pretended to be affectionate. "Your father has always missed you. And Gu Shen, you're really a talent. You should have settled a few big business deals recently, right? Even this inexperienced daughter of mine thinks of you as some powerful person." As soon as Luo Yun opened her mouth, Yan Shi shuddered. Her hands and feet went limp, and the fear in her heart surged. She frowned, her face growing paler. Gu Shen's gaze swept past the two of them. Just as he was about to speak, Yan Shi spoke before him. "Indeed. My husband is very impressive. Unlike my father, who is old and can only rely on these boring banquets to make himself look important." What Yen Dong valued the most was how people looked at him. Yan Shi's public ridicule made his face change immediately. He was about to talk back when Gu suddenly handed him a wooden box. Gu Shen explained calmly, this is the gift I prepared for you, Wu Tao Tsu's real work, Yangzhou Spring Levy. Wu Tao Tsu. Yan Dong's eyes lit up. He ignored Yan Shi and opened the painting in front of everyone. After confirming that it was real, he instantly became enthusiastic. My son.in.law is truly something. You're actually able to get Wu Tao Tsu's authentic work. Yan Dong wasn't a cultured person, but he pretended to be cultured. He collected some famous calligraphies and paintings to show people that he was cultured. The thing that Gu Shen gave him was to his liking. I found it accidentally. Yan Dong hurriedly asked the servant to take care of the item and asked warmly, how have you been doing recently? Not too bad. I got some wild ginseng a few days ago. I'll send it to your father later. Chapter 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Blocking Gu Shen from being seen. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. A few more people came in. Before Yan Shi could identify them, Luo Yun and Yan Dong greeted them with smiles. It seemed like their social statuses were higher than his. Yan Shi pouted and pushed Gu Shen to the side together with Gu Er. She thought about that painting and still felt like her father didn't deserve the gift. She poked Gu Shen's shoulder and he looked up at her. Is that painting real? Did you just give it to Yan Dong like that? Yan Shi lowered her voice and whispered into Gu Shen's ear. As she spoke, her hot breath blew into his ear, making him itchy. Since I've already given it away, there's no reason for me to take it back. Yan Shi sighed heavily. She knew that her executive husband was rich, but she could not help but feel bad about it. That was Wu Tao Tsu's authentic work. It was priceless. A pretentious old guy like Yan Dong didn't deserve it. Why didn't you talk to me about it beforehand? Gu Shen's expression changed. You asked me to give this out. Yan Shi was speechless. The host was really stupid. She thought that the painting could please Yan Dong, so she forced Gu Shen to give it out. She muttered softly, then don't listen to me next time when it comes to spending money. The spot where Gu Shen and Yan Shi stood was not very eye-catching, but the rest of the people still looked over either openly or secretly. They whispered a few more words with each other and then directly treated Gu Shen like he didn't exist. Gu Shen was already used to this attitude, but Yan Shi got angry. Was there something wrong with this group of people's brains? Why did they have to treat Gu Shen so brutally just because he was crippled? She glared at them and was so angry that she wanted to sew their mouths shut. Gu Shen looked at Yan Shi's expression and knew that she was going to be angry again. He wondered what pejorative words she would say this time. Trash or fool? Unexpectedly, Yan Shi didn't say anything. She just stood up and blocked Gu Shen from everyone's line of sight. She grumbled unhappily, what's there to see? Gu Shen looked at Yan Shi quietly, his eyes filled with inexplicable emotions. Gu Shen did not stay for long. When the phone rang again, he left with Gu Er first. Before leaving, he looked at Yan Shi and gave her a reminder. The driver will pick you up later. Remember to call him if anything happens. Yan Shi nodded obediently and asked, then, can I call you? Suit yourself. Yan Shi was very happy. After sending him away, she checked her phone and realized that she had not saved Gu Shen's number at all. She walked back to the hall and immediately saw the beef Wellington on the buffet table. Golden crispy outer skin, rich stuffing, pink beef. Every part of it was tempting Yan Shi. Cut me a piece of it. The waiter swiftly cut the beef and placed it on the silver plate. After applying the sauce, he passed it to Yan Shi. Yan Shi thanked him and took some toast and fruits from the dining table. Whether it was in the Yan family or in this circle, Yan Shi was a peripheral character. Even if she left the banquet, no one would pay attention to her. She didn't want to stay here listening to their flattery, so she simply carried a plate of bread and beef to the pool in the backyard. Yan Shi placed the plate on the table beside the pool and sat down. The temperature of the steak was just right, but Yan Shi chose to eat the piece of toast beside her first. The bread was wrapped in sauce, and a rich fragrance filled her mouth. Yan Shi was a little stunned and wanted to take another bite when a huge force pushed her from behind. The fork cut her upper jaw and the taste of blood instantly filled her mouth. Chapter 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pick it up translator. Henyi Translations editor. Henyi Translations. Being knocked by Yan Shi, the table swayed and almost flipped over. The beef that had yet to be eaten rolled on the floor, leaving a trail of sticky gravy. A woman's harsh and vicious voice sounded behind her. "Oh, is my sister coming back just to steal some food? If the Gu family is not giving you food, then you can beg me. Once I'm pleased, I might even give you some of Felix's food." A sharp and unkind female voice was heard. Yan Shi wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and looked back. In front of her was the youngest daughter of the Yan family, Yan Qi. At the age of 20, she neither went to school nor went to work. Every day, she stayed at home, only eating and lying in bed. She was getting fatter and fatter, and her skin was getting worse. Even expensive cosmetics could not cover the pimple marks and flaws on her face. And Felix was Yan Qi's pet dog. Yan Shi sneered and her dark eyes landed on Yan Qi. "Pick it up." Yan Shi said coldly. "What did you say?" "Pick up the beef on the floor." "How dare you order me around?" Yan Qi glared at her, the fat on her face jiggling. "You little b*tch who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Do you think you can become a phoenix just because you married into the Gu family?" She walked up to Yan Shi with a sinister smile. "I think you've forgotten what pain feels like." Yan Qi's ruthlessness was even worse than Luo Yun's. When she was young, the host was covered in injuries all because of Yan Qi. In junior high, Yan Qi cut the host's face with a pair of scissors because she was jealous. As soon as she recalled this memory, her body could not help but tremble. While she was thinking, Yan Qi had already pounced at her. Yan Qi nimbly dodged to her back and kicked the fat knee. Yan Qi let out a cry of pain. Her body swayed and she fell to the ground with a thud, her face pressed against the piece of beef that had fallen. "Yan Shi." She struggled to stand up, panting as she scolded, "You little b*tch, how dare you hit me? I will definitely scratch your face with my knife. Pick up my beef, what the heck are you talking about?" As soon as she said that, Yan Qi fell to the ground again. With a clang, the table next to her was shaken. "If you don't pick it up, I won't let you get back up tonight." Yan Qi shouted angrily. This time, before she could get up, Yan Shi kicked her again. "Hurry up." Yan Shi was very impatient. "I don't have time to waste here with you." Yan Qi twisted her body and found that she couldn't stand up at all. Yan Shi was a thin and weak woman. Where did she get such strength from? "Hurry up and pick it up." Yan Shi kicked her, and Yan Qi was now so scared that she had to listen and pick up the beef. "I've picked it up," Yan Qi shouted. "Let me up. It's exhausting getting up on your own." Yan Qi smiled beside her ear. "Let me help you." With that, she grabbed Yan Qi's hair and pulled her up. Yan Qi's hair was pulled back, and her face was lifted up. Her lips were curved, and she was saying all kinds of ugly words. "You little bitch, you're just like your mother. I'm going to kill you later." Yan Qi's smile disappeared. In her original world, she and her mother depended on each other for survival. In order to support her in her studies, her mother had worked hard for most of her life. What she could not tolerate the most was others insulting her mother. Yan Shi put on a chilling smile and pressed her fork against Yan Qi's face. "What a pity. Luo Yun isn't here now. Even if I kill you, no one will come out to stop me."